Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to South Africa's National Energy Association's first installment of the first part series, where we'll deep dive into the critical financial issues plaguing the South African energy sector. South Africa's electricity supply industry is grappling with severe financial crisis, characterized by Eskom struggles, mounting municipal debt, and the loss of paying customers. These immediate challenges threaten the stability of the power system and require a great attention. That's in today's webinar. We'll explore the root causes, assess the impacts on the consumers and the economy, and examine the potential solutions for immediate stabilization. Today's webinar is titled South Africa's Electricity Finances, Addressing Immediate Challenges Together. The overall objective of the webinar are to analyze the key drivers of Eskom's financial distress, assess the scale and impact of municipal debt, examine the implications of customer migration and its impact on Eskom's revenue, evaluate potential short-term interventions to stabilize the sector's finances, and discuss the strategies for improving revenue collection and reducing non-payment. Please note that this, Sarah, just checking with you, will you be recording the session today? While Sarah does confirm that, please ensure that your mic is on mute and only turn it on when it's your turn to speak. Thank you and enjoy the webinar. And to introduce, I am Debe. I'm a Renewable Energy Technical Advisor at C40 Cities. Thank you for joining, and I'll be the moderator for today. Before we get started, a few house rules. There will be a survey question that will be shared. We'll appreciate your responses. But before we get started on the survey, I just have a few other things. You may use if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat to pose questions, but we'll also have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, as well as the end of towards the end of the panel discussion. Today we'll hear from recognized experts. We have Dr. Peter, from a senior lecturer and research lead at University of UCT, who will set the stage for providing a comprehensive overview of the financial stability challenges facing South Africa's electricity supply. This presentation will cover key themes, data, and trends, which will set the context for the discussion. After that, I will allow 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll have a panel discussion. Thank you, and before we get started with our presentation, I would allow for the survey. Sarah, over to you.
It has been posted in the chat.
Please take a few minutes, colleagues, to answer the survey. So I'll give it a minute or so, but it's an ongoing survey. So when you have time during the discussions, please do answer the survey. We appreciate your responses. While everyone's getting started with the survey, Peter, can I hand over to you with the presentation to start the discussions today?
Thank you, Lengide. Good morning, everyone. Privileged to be here today to share with you some perspectives about the state of the financial state of electricity sector supply industry's financial and sustainability. I know this is typically the work of municipalities and Eskom, who are more familiar with this, but what I'm here to do is give a perspective that will plan or play out as a scene-setting presentation for the conversations we're going to have. Peter Twesige from the Power Features Lab at the Graduate School of Business at the University of Cape Town, and we focus on power procurement in Africa, how to attract investments in Africa. I also look at the performance of utilities and regulation of the same, and as well as the distributed energy resources within the broader energy transition. So for the purpose of this workshop or webinar is to give a broad framing. And I think it'd be most positive if we can actually give a broader perspective and framing of the entire state-owned enterprises. I think if we look at it in that way, then we're able to understand and distill the root causes of the issues that we have. So persistently, so is the realization that most SOEs, including Eskom, are financially distressed. And this is a culmination of the weak governance arrangements that potentially we have amongst the government-controlled enterprises. So these manifest in terms of the weak contracts that are signed between these entities and the government and how these contracts are enforced. But also there are structural weaknesses that need to be addressed. Running 250 something municipalities is a hard task, and it's not easy to get all these to comply to any of these obligations they are mandated to do. And certainly there will be contradictory or challenging circumstances unique to each of these municipalities and provincial requirements. So, of course, then there's the financial strain that also emerges from the local market and economic factors, but also some that actually come because of the externalities, because we're exposed and we work in a global market. So these impact on some of the performance failures that we see happening. At the operational side, we see some weaknesses within the operational performance of these entities. Has been rolling blackouts in the previous years, and I'm happy that Eskom has put in place interventions to actually mitigate load shedding, but we are not yet out of the woods yet. There are maintenance issues that will ultimately filter through the financial performance of the utilities. There is also a failure to implement certain turnaround plans that have been pronounced, but still implementation is weak. And ultimately, these manifest or filter through causing declining sales and weak revenue growth. They have high operating costs that manifest in inefficiencies in how we contract out services within these utilities and municipalities. And then the inadequate incentives that actually I would say absent incentives, because when you look at the structure of the incentives that these municipalities get, or even the Eskom itself, I don't think there is enough incentives to push for greater performance on how to overcome the challenges. Of course, the issue here is with all SOEs is the lack of hard budgets, in a sense that this keeps bailing out these entities, and there's a culture, a moral hazard that permeates through over time. And ultimately, there is the issue of underpricing that needs to be discussed in broad detail with the regulator and the ministry, the policymakers, to actually put in place the right pricing structures and methodologies to be followed. So the graph at the bottom shows you how these SOEs actually are a drain on the national fiscus, with Eskom, which has traditionally taken the lion's share of the drain on the fiscus, not in a positive way, but negative way. SANRA is Post Office, Postnet, Transnet, sorry, and all these other SOEs are increasingly chipping onto the state fiscus. And so what we are saying is that the combination of all these are causing a decline in the cash flows of these SOEs. The graph there shows the increasing debt obligation, debt principal repayments, which seems to be a major contributor here. And the net cash flow from operations has been going down from previous years, now at 68.2. I'm picking this graph from the National Treasury Budget Review report that was presented. And here what we notice that Eskom has since 2008 been getting state bailouts from amounting to about 241 billion. And more recently through the debt relief program of 254 billion. So it's a combined amount of about 496 billion from the state. And so we noticed that whereas Eskom has put in place some reforms, and municipalities are implementing some initiatives, reforms to actually turn around their situation in line with their respective debt relief and guarantee conditions, the progress is really very slow. And as of March 2024, 71 municipalities had registered for the debt relief and guarantee conditions, but we're seeing the compliance and actually meeting these obligations is not coming through, not matching the same. So hence we have growing municipal arrears growing to about 110 billion by March 2025, which is a huge amount that needs to be contained. But broadly, is what you're saying is that there's no free lunch, whereas there's an expectation that government is going to continue bailing out Eskom or these municipalities. These bailouts come from somewhere, and someone is paying either through taxes or transfers or cross subsidies that have to be transferred from the tariffs. Largely, these are slides from Eskom. Most of you have probably seen these, but these are a presentation of the growing share of municipal debt to Eskom, and the more the municipalities fail to pay Eskom, of course, his financial position will be imperiled. And then on the right is the list of the top defaulting municipalities at the end of November 2024. I'm sure Caleb is going to give us a more updated slide or update about those. But what we're saying is that these municipalities, and picking from the Minister of Electricity's recent comments, that municipalities that have arrears exceeding 90 days may not be able to actually honor their debts, repay their arrears. So then that means that the intervention that could be put in place is actually reduce this expectation to now. We don't need to have any arrears with these municipalities. So these technologies that can be put in place using smart prepaid meters to ensure that actually these arrears are not allowed to accumulate. The standard practice within some of the best performing utilities is to have arrear corrections of a target of 30 days. And if goes beyond, then shouldn't exceed 60 days. I think that's a good practice. But even with this, I think there is need to shift now with the advancement in technology and AI to have installed prepaid meters, both at single phase and three phase. And there's nothing that would stop this from happening. So you look at the performance of municipalities, distribution level, and I'm drawing on the report by GIZ, SAG, and CPS that was done previous in 2023, which looked at assessing this volume of sales across a number of municipalities, 167 in total actually, using the NASA-D forms. And these sales categorization for the various municipalities sizes was broken down into these groups, 5 groups. Those that sold 1,000 plus gigawatt hours, and those that sold between 300 and 1,000 gigawatt hours, those between 300 gigawatt and 100, and those between 150 gigawatt hours. And this is the aggregation or segmentation that was used in carrying out this study. And what was found was that out of 167 municipalities, 13 municipalities gross sales were lower than their gross purchases, resulting in negative purchases values. Some sell more electricity than they purchase, meaning they're starting to benefit from the rooftop solar systems. And then, of course, half of municipalities, about 87 of these, have negative profits. So they're loss-making, actually. And 3/4, about 110, actually, have losses that exceed NASA prescribed loss levels of 10%. All this translates into revenue loss to the industry. And then these losses above 10% is actually translate about 7 billion if you translate that in loss levels. Then overall, when you move the outliers of the extremely poorly performing of overstated figures, because the data reliability was quite a bit of a challenge, you notice that there is statistically a significant number of small municipalities that outperform the larger municipalities, where there is a perception that small municipalities could be potentially failing to actually perform better. These small municipalities actually try to do better than the larger, bigger municipalities and metros. And then this is a comparison of the importance of the scale of the utility in terms of the utilities, the economy of scales that would benefit these larger metros and municipalities. They have a better customer mix in relation to the net profits. They should be able to generate more profits by selling more power and reducing losses because they have the capabilities. What we are saying is that according to this graphic analysis, comparing energy losses, these larger municipalities tend to have higher loss levels, and that's more revenue lost in there, which continuously deteriorates the financial position of the balance sheets. And then you have these have equally proceed to have lower negative returns yet with the higher average tariff. So previously we've noticed the high tariff increases been awarded to Eskom and to some of these municipalities, but it doesn't translate into revenues. So the question to ask there is, where is this money going? And then, sorry, the next slide is we're looking at the comparison of the net profits for metros that sell between 300 and gigawatt hours, but less than 1,000. That segmentation shows that majority of these larger these metro municipalities typically they have higher losses going above 80%, 60%, 40%, some even 20%. But then their profitability is not as comparing, because it should be greater than the what they actually are capable of selling, but then the concentration is at the bottom 5% and 15% thereabouts. And then if you look at the metros, the segment of category of municipalities that fell between 100 and 300 gigawatt hours, you see the concentration is still at the bottom, the profitability is low, and you still have high losses, energy losses to the left. And if you compare profitability against average sales, then you notice that profitability is to some of these medium is relatively better on the right side, and still have some of the others to the left. So statistically, the medium-sized municipalities seem to outperform the larger municipalities, and these would benefit from greater incentives put in place and better governance controls to help them achieve better performance. This group seems to have achieved good net profit performance with low levels while keeping tariffs at the average levels without changes. Now, when you do a sustainability ranking and analysis of profitability that's greater than 20% using the NASA benchmarks, what we are seeing is that there is a high profit, comparing the average losses, average purchase selling rates, and operating efficiency with the relative bulk purchases that they do, is we notice a few of them actually being able to achieve some level of sustainability into the future. But what we think is that the high profit or municipalities or metros declaring more profits is not always an indicator of sustainability. Some have benefited from the tariff increases, but these may not be sustainable, and then also means that these are either not spending enough on operations, deteriorating to services, manifesting in energy losses. But we also see the others that also report low losses, which is also an indication of the data's consistency and reliability of some of this data. And then if you look at the ranking overall, in terms of the groupings, the 5 groupings that I mentioned earlier on, so out of the group, the first group of 11, only have 6 metros. These are the first group that sell more than 1,000 gigawatt hours of energy. Only 6 are able to in green meaning financial sustainability going forward. And those that sell between 500 and 1,000 gigawatt hours only have 18 that could potentially continue. And then in the group of the 19, that would be only 19 that relatively could, if certain interventions were put in place, could become financially sustainable going forward. But overall, we are seeing an increasing deterioration in the financial performance, and you have about 167 utilities, so 110 that have sustainability challenges and will not be able to actually pay their obligations to Eskom, if I may put it in simple terms. But sustainability really looks at even the broader aspect of the economic performance, meaning that the pricing should reflect the the economic costs into the long term, and the ability to invest, also provide incentives and returns to actually the shareholder, who seems to be the state. There is a perception that the state shouldn't actually earn returns, but the state uses funds, and funds come from either taxes, and these taxes should translate into better services to the consumers. So with that, this marks the presentation I intended to give like a scene-setting landscape of what's causing or where the state of the financial position of municipalities and metros and Eskom. And I'm happy now to hand over back to the moderator to open the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. You have really, you have highlighted some of the key challenges that facing Eskom and our municipalities I think, and I think most of us are fully aware of those issues, which increasing tariffs, operational issues, and municipalities not being able to pay on time. I'll now hand over to the audience. If anyone has questions for Peter before we begin our panel discussions, I'll take 3 questions if anyone has questions directed to Peter. All right, I am not seeing hands at the moment or questions on the chat at the moment, Peter.
Question from David.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
Just a comment, a question, and it's almost I know with the Soweto, which is a classic example, first post-paid installation in what, 1980 or something. Eskom has continually been giving proposals of how to fix it, of writing off debt if they pay future bills. Has any of these, and it's being done now with the Munichs, and you mentioned it in your talk, Peter, have any of these actually worked in your opinion?
Thank you, David. I think I would deflect this to Caleb because he's dealing with these. But I would say they haven't worked. Otherwise, they still have huge debts owed to Eskom, and they need to clear their balances to zero. That's a preferred position for Eskom to have with these it's kind of metros and maybe townships that are not paying their bills, but there could be better arrangements that could be put in place to have those bills honored and paid in time. Technology is one of them, but there are other commercial remedies that could be exercised in terms of the contractual arrangement that Eskom has with the regulator and the government. But I'll let Caleb speak to this later on. Yeah.
Thank you for the response, Peter, and the question. I think Robert might want to respond to that. So I see your hand up. Please go ahead, and then I'll come to Kosana's question.
No, it's a question that I want to raise.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the presentation. The question that I have, in your analysis, you did mention that from 2008, the utility started to have a strain. In your research, were you able to identify the cause of failure to pay the accounts for the utility when you were checking all these things? I wanted to know from your analysis if you are able to identify the cause of the failure to pay the accounts on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Yes, there is a couple of reasons that's why people are unable to pay, and this speaks to the point of the economic inequalities in the country that the country, of course, faces, and of course that disproportionately disadvantages the low-income groups who are not able to actually honor their bills in time. There's also been a couple of issues that Eskom has been trying to resolve over time, including technological aspects. There's been issues to do with largely the municipalities transferring these monies or using this money for other services to cross-subsidize other services like water, electricity, roads, health services, and all these others, which links to the financial management Act that needs to be also revised. So the legislation there needs to be aligned with the acts and needs of the electricity sector, so that kind of cross-subsidization should have a ring-fenced mechanism that these revenues are not transferred or taken to other services. So and of course, when you don't have ring-fenced accounts to have a proper delineation of the revenues from the energy sales to subsidizing other services, then you're likely to have the metros or the users eating into the pie that would otherwise be going to Eskom. But that's a legislative issue that needs to be managed in addition to the income, the inequality the country is exposed to. Yeah, and a couple of other issues, really. Thank you.
Thank you again, Peter. There's a question on the Q&A that, from Konsana that says, do you think the 3-year plan put forward to erase the municipal debt will be achieved as long as they adhere to certain conditions?
Look, yes, there's been reforms that could have been proposed previously, including these are mainly structural reforms and some are commercial reforms that have to be done. I mentioned one of them being that running 260 something or 57 municipalities is really a structural failure that needs to be resolved by creating maybe regional electricity distribution companies that could benefit from the large economies of scale and providing more reliable services, and also they're able to put in place commercial interventions that could address the risks that these municipalities face, and then they're able to actually achieve financial sustainability. But unless you're able to handle that issue of forming regional electricity distribution companies, or even adopting some interventions like concessioning some of the service provision to either Eskom or the private sector, or have a local municipality that has built the capacity, the skill sets that don't exist in these spaces, then it's going to be a challenge. But these solutions exist. Concessioning is one mechanism. You could have management contracts, you could have leases, and what the French call the affirmage solutions happening or being implemented in some of these municipalities. But these are relatively interventions that need to be backed by the top leadership of the country as well as the provincial leadership, because they bring in there's the political economy around this that needs to be factored in. And then there is, of course, the reforms are very easy and clear to understand. If you put in place the right management structures, if you provide the right incentives, this can be done and solved. Thank you.
Thanks. Before we move to the panel, there is one last question, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to respond to that one, or if we should divert it to Caleb. Is how's the outlook of the city of Ekurhuleni? Was there any defaults in the past 5 years?
Thank you. I would let me not go individually to any of these metros and municipalities, but yes, we could share the reports. The reports publicly available. We can share it, and then you take a deep dive to understand the assumptions were used, so that's a clear contextualization of the results out there. But there could be a signaling from Robert or Caleb on how this, or even Faneri, on how this has been panning out. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. If people do have more questions for Peter, please do post them in the chat or Q&A. We'll try to get to them as well. But for now, we'll move to our panel discussion. In the panel discussion, we have experts really ranging from the utility, private sector, as well as representing some of our customers. We have finally Mondi, Chief Executive Officer at Energy Intensive Users Group of Southern Africa. We have Caleb Kasim, Chief Financial Officer at Eskom Group. We have Robert Maswangai, Municipal Manager at Govern Mbeki Local Municipality, and Rose Muleshe, Managing Director at Rubik Pty Ltd. The panel discussion would dive deeper into the specific aspects of the topic and discuss potential solutions. Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us today and taking the time out of your diaries to engage with us on this important issue. I think more than anything else, Peter has set a really set a ground for what we are going to discuss today. So I thought maybe we could pick it up, starting with you, Caleb, if you have any responses, particularly because I think Peter has highlighted the challenges. So if you could respond to some of the solutions that you're putting up, also in response to one of them, the questions from the audience on what with some of the turnaround strategies that you have implemented previously, such as in Soweto and other places. How has the implementation been like, and what have been the challenges, and what have been actually been successful as well? Thank you, Caleb.
Thanks. Good morning to everyone on this webinar. So I think first and foremost, we've tried a few things, prepaid meters, etc. In Soweto, and we're going to roll out going forward smart meters across our entire customer base of 7 million customers in the next 3 years. But I think the bottom line is, if I look specifically Soweto, we've written off their debt on a number of occasions. Their payment rates have been averaging, I think, anything between 20 and 25% from Soweto. And then to get to the second question, I think specifically also David and I think Robert touched on it. If we look at our municipal debt and metro debt as well, including Ekoleleni, that 95 billion that we shared at our results presentation, I think currently it's closer to 98 billion rand. So, we may touch by year end close to 100 billion. But more concerningly, from a financial viability for Eskom, if there's no arrest in the increasing non-payment from these municipalities and some of the metros we've entered into payment arrangements, that is one of our biggest concerns. We've highlighted this in Parliament to our board and including Scopa, and the minister has acknowledged this, that we need a resolution to arresting this. I think with National Treasury, they've implemented this incentive. If a municipality that has signed up to it, some 71 have signed up to the incentive National Treasury has put in place as part of the debt relief. I think only about 10 or 11 are currently complying and meeting their current accounts. So it's not achieving the desired outcome. That's why we see the trend of non-payment increase. On average for a month in Eskom, we're looking at around 2 to sometimes 2.5 billion that we don't collect. And based on our financial situation, that is unsustainable. But we fully agree, the use of technology, smart meters will go a long way. But there's also other elements around energy losses and making sure we deal with that, not only on the Eskom distribution lines, but also the municipal lines that needs to be looked at. So those are my introductory remarks. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Robert, can I also pass to you if you have some remarks to the presentation around municipal debt and municipalities not being able to pay, but also touching on what Caleb has just said around the incentives that NESA has put forward. Do you think those are going to be able to help municipalities to be able to pay on time in the future?
Thank you very much, and greetings to everyone. This challenge that we are having, if we align it with the presentation that we had initially, maybe I must just apologize because I'm on the road. However, the situation that is happening, it's because the lower municipalities are struggling to pay the current accounts, mainly because of the theft of our consumers who are stealing electricity. And if you dig down, you realize that it is not just theft, it's because of unaffordability of electricity. Starting from around 2007, the increase of electricity has been increasing by over double-digit percentage. So it's quite unsustainable. I mean, looking at it, in around 2000, 2001, a kilowatt hour was in a range of about 25 cents. And now it is going to around 3 rand per unit. Our consumers, they've been so used to cheap electricity, and now it is very expensive and they cannot afford. I can talk a bit about the experience that I have in this municipality. I'm working in Govinberg local municipality here in Mpumalanga, which is one of the municipality that is struggling to pay the current account, and it is on the debt relief. I came here about 2.5 years ago. The losses, the electricity losses, at the time that when I started working here, they were at 74%. So you can see that the municipality there was no way that we could pay the account. We started vigorously with the lot of work that we are doing. And now trying to say in the past 2 months, last month, the losses are going down, but they are at about, talking about the stats that I have for end of February, they were around 43%. So we have taken it down from 75 to around 43%, but we are still going down. As much as we are moving vigorously, you realize that the consumers that we are giving them electricity, because mostly are residential, they cannot afford the electricity we are giving them. As much as there are incentives, or you can call them free basic electricity, the FBE or free basic electricity that the government or national is giving to the poor of the poorest, it is quite minimal. For me, if I use the street language, we are giving them chicken feet. And then the moment you give them the taste of chicken, they want the entire chicken, of which I somehow feel the government needs to increase that FBE, because we are giving them, and then the moment 50 kilowatt hour get finished, they go and break in our meter boxes, and you can try to increase and put in the smart meter that detects where these people are stealing. You end up seeing that the theft is happening all over in such a way that now we become a police, and then you are actually changing from a technical environment to a community service, where you need to guard the theft of electricity. And this is happening even in the side of Eskom. If you check in where they are supplying electricity to residential, specifically I can talk about Soweto. Even Eskom is struggling to collect in those areas. The lower municipality or smaller municipalities, we are struggling because most of our consumers in the smaller municipalities are residential, and those residential, they are not working. And there's a paradigm shift effectively in the after 2010. People are moving from our grid, and now they are going off grid using a solar system. And those people, when they go out for solar system, and now it is becoming cheaper, those people who are regularly paying the accounts accordingly, their consumption has gone down. And those people who are stealing electricity, they are using electricity far more, because they are even living in winter. They are leaving their heaters on because they are not paying for the electricity. You ask them, you do this little research that we do. They said when they come back, they want the room to be warm. And then it's huge electricity that we are using. And then at the same time, the municipality is failing to pay. When we come to the debt relief, the debt relief says we are giving the municipality to pay the current account, but it is also difficult to pay the current account because you are having losses that are over 50%. Even if you collect and then you ring fence the income of electricity, all that amount that you're getting in most of our municipality or so-called local municipalities, they cannot pay even the current account when you do that. Of which, to me, the debt relief must not just be a debt relief. It must be a debt relief with the assistance of this smart metering tamper-proof boxes, and also increase the FDE. That is my view. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. Please do drive safely on the road. Finally, if I can come to you just to hear your responses from Peter's presentation as what has been said so far, but also as energy consumers, how are you dealing with this, and how are you encouraging your members, particularly to ensure that they are paying and they're not leaving the grid as well? Yeah. You are on mute.
Thank you. Apologies for that.
No problem.
Thank you. I listening to Peter, I think there is all sorts of different drivers for our financial sustainability. Yes, we may have a forecast on the municipal debt by and large in terms of the slides, but I would just like, before maybe I come to your question, just to touch on what I see as the drivers, for financial sustainability. I think for me, the first one is probably the cost efficiencies, from an Eskom point of view. Are we running a really efficient utility? I think that's what Eskom probably has to ask themselves. The second one is what we've been talking about for most of the time. It's about the issues of non-payment, by municipalities and other customers. And I can assure you, our members are paying their bills in full. So on that one, we cannot be accused of any of such. I think the other one is the issues around the costs of the new build, which Eskom is struggling to pay off. They've received several, debt relief, not debt relief, what to call it, balance sheet augmentation, supplies from the government, but it looks like it continues, to drain their finances. The other one is just about the governance failures. I think Peter touched on that, to say we have governance failures contributing to this. For me, there's two things around those governance failures. The first one probably is the one which I will call political, which can be associated with the state capture, for instance, which we all know it has drained the South African fiscus quite a lot. The second one associated with that is really the issues of fraud and corruption with Eskom. I think Eskom are going through an exercise to deal with that, but at this stage, it doesn't seem that that has been really arrested. So I think those are some of the things which probably Eskom needs to drive a little bit harder to improve the financial sustainability. The issue around the sales decline, certainly I think we are affected. Probably we are contributing, because if you are to look at the sales from the mining and the industrial sector over the years, those have been declining. There are various reasons for that. Some of them are related to, market performance. As you know, most of our members are into commodity markets, so they go up and down. So there's that aspect, which is pure economic. But some of it is related to electricity. I think Robert touched on it in terms of how much the increases have been going. I was looking at the annual report recently from Eskom, where the industrial and mining, were paying about 15 cents to 2003. 2023, 2024, they were paying 1.71 rand. That's an increase of 10 times more than what it was in a period of about 20 years. I don't think any business can really sustain that, considering that our members, some of them, electricity is a major cost in their business. It can range, between 10 to, sometimes 40%. So you can imagine if those costs are increasing 1,000 times, 10 times, there is a problem, and therefore part of the problem or resolution of that problem will be a decline in terms of, how you use the electricity. So there is that aspect. And then in terms of the energy losses, I think Peter touched on it as well as Robert. So that continues to be a problem, and it's becoming severe because it's not only just about the unique meter at a customer point. It is so spread that it is quite I don't know, it's getting catastrophic. I was reading yesterday a news article from the Independent Online where it was talking about somebody who was arrested in Winterveld. This person was arrested with, I think, about 37 transformers, worth about 1.7 million rands, but he had installed about 27 transformers, resulting in a loss of about 90 million rands. So you have got people who are running parallel utilities to Eskom. That's how bad the issue of the energy losses is than individual meters at a customer point. It's where people are actually running businesses in parallel to Eskom. So we probably the issues of law enforcement, regular auditing become crucial, to arrest such things. The last point I just want to talk about is the issues of the pricing methodology. I think the current pricing methodology is not making Eskom happy. They complain that it is not giving them cost-reflective tariffs, but it is also not making customers happy because we believe that it doesn't help us with the affordability of electricity. And hence there is therefore a need to look at the pricing methodology as well to say what is the best optimum pricing methodology which will it will probably not make any of us happy, but it could give us some level of satisfaction as consumers as well as utilities. So I will just leave it at that at the moment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, finally, for that. And I think sometimes we often think about energy poverty from at a residential point of view, where we think low-income households are the ones who are also suffering from energy poverty, but we also have highlighted that actually, in fact, businesses are also actually, in fact, spending way too much towards our electric costs. You mentioned 10 to 40% there, so it's actually quite alarming how much, if business are suffering, how about the low-income households and at the bottom are unemployed as well. So I think, yeah, that's something to think about. I'll hand over to you, Rose, just to give also a reflection of what has been said and what are some of the things that we can start to think about in terms of providing solutions for financial sustainability in all these issues that have been mentioned so far. Yeah.
Thank you. A good morning to everyone. I think most of the issues that are really pertinent in the sector have really been touched on by everyone who has said something. I think for me, the biggest challenge that I see, I would say, obviously, is credit enhancement in terms of Eskom's inability to do so, mainly also because of some of the government interventions that prevent the effectiveness of that. I mean, City of Joburg, you will remember the issues that relate to that, and Eskom trying to go after the City of Joburg, but we have not been able to recover that. So if there's no resolution or a resolute stance from government in terms of how that issue can be addressed, we are talking about a sustainability challenge that will continue to show us challenges. I think also from losses, touched on that, from a theft as well as, I think I would agree that there is a level of inefficiencies in terms of that. I think there was the story that we also of a farmer that was providing electricity to also low-income households and selling that for many years. Recently, Eskom has been following up on that case. So those examples, if you multiply that, have a significant impact as well in terms of being able to contain the challenges that we see. The shocking, electricity losses moving from 70-something%, that's really, it just says that there's no revenue collection at all. Even if there's an improvement to 43%, really that my jaw dropped when I heard those kind of statistics. That just means that you have a tap that's just running without any controls. So controls are a problem. Yes, technology has a role to play, but you will see that in other countries, there have been interventions that are more on a social, from a social perspective, involving communities to be able to try and address the situation. But I don't want to minimize the challenges to just that. There are a number of issues. At the core of it, in my view, is government intervention with respect to municipalities being, I wouldn't say not firm. We've had interventions many times before, where there's Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma at some point was leading a group that was looking at the municipal debt. And then there was the National Treasury intervention, which is not yielding any results. And we still hear the minister, current minister, talking about interventions in that regard. So I don't think that we come up with solutions that are sustainable. Thanks.
Thanks, Rose. Khalid, if I can come to you, and hopefully what has been said is not an attack, but rather a discussion so far. So with what has been said so far, what is Eskom trying to put in place? Particularly, I think what Robert highlighted is that we have people that are leaving because the tariffs are so high, and because of load shedding, they are sorting themselves out and they're putting solar panels. But what you also have is that we're then being left with people who are not able to pay, and or people who are actually then resulting to theft of electricity. What are some of the interventions that you have that we are implementing at the moment to ensure that we have financial sustainability, and touching also on the tariffs, because there was a highlight that of course we need to cost reflective tariffs, but then cost reflective tariffs have actually resulted in more and more theft because people are also saying they're not able to afford it. So what are some of the things that you are putting in place at the moment to try and deal with these issues to ensure that we have financial sustainability at Eskom?
Thanks, Ngiwe. Let me first agree with the colleagues, what they've said. In particular, fully support, from our quadrant to get to financial sustainability for Eskom, one of the key components is our own cost efficiencies, as Vanilla has highlighted, which also includes working with law enforcement, plus our own security and investigators around fraud and corruption. But it does take time. Just these examples, those investigations didn't happen overnight. They take a number of years to get to conclusion. So agree with that in terms of cost efficiencies and fraud. I think if I move on specifically, I want to touch on, I'll come back to the tariffs, on the municipalities, especially municipalities that don't have the necessary skills. We as Eskom believe that we need to enter into what we call agency agreements with them to work and support them with our technical skills, to roll out with the support of government smart meters, not for municipal customers, to just look at this the infrastructure and the health of their networks. In Scopa, Mr. Bala mentioned that at Maluti Upperfong, they couldn't even find meters, right? So if you don't even have a meter, how do you know how much you're losing and what should be built? So I think as Eskom, we need to work with municipalities. We also have our own challenges. A number of them, and I think it was the deputy minister that said that a number of them don't even have electrical engineers as part of their skills base. So this is where Eskom needs to partner with the municipalities to improve their systems, transfer skills, so correct amounts can be built and then collected. And then once it's collected, Eskom's portion that belongs to that bulk purchase should be given to us to deal with, as Robert said, the current accounts, and then they must take the remainder. You know, we've had a situation where we attach bank accounts that creates unnecessary tensions between the municipality and Eskom. So, and then even to what Rosa said, you know, we've also had the previous deputy president head up this task team to deal with municipality areas, and but it hasn't given us any benefits. So I think from our side as Eskom, we believe a combination of this partnership, agency agreement plus technologies, but there also has to be in South Africa this culture of payment where you can afford, and there must be specific mechanisms to say a certain customer only can afford, I don't know, 20 cents in the rand, and we must accept that to avoid them stealing and damaging infrastructure, because infrastructure replacement costs a lot and it has implications in terms of the rest of the customer base. From an Eskom perspective, fully agree, yes, prices have gone up significantly in the last 10, 15 years, and we all have the stats. The only point I want to make here is maybe twofold. What we're seeing as Eskom, and it really comes back to the reliability of supply. Yes, February has been difficult with 3 occasions of load shedding. I think cumulatively so far in this financial year, the February and March incidents total about 11 days. We must just continue with what we've done for the rest of the year and make sure we can deliver that supply. But what does that do in terms of Eskom's financial viability? One, we are selling more. Yes, you must collect what you sell. That's the challenge we're also talking about. But we've already seen year on year that with the reduction in load shedding, despite people moving off grid, we do see our sales increasing. It increases the confidence in the South African economy, and as we've indicated, once the remainder of the units come online, we're quite confident that load shedding should be under really exceptional circumstances and unforeseen circumstances. And if it does occur, it's for a very short period, and we must recover as quick as possible. But getting to the price of electricity, yes, Slingiwe. So remember, and it's linked to what Fanele also said around the pricing methodology. We all agree you must recover efficient costs, and yes, we must be challenged. But the one part we don't address, and this is where it leaves Eskom in an unsustainable position. Our infrastructure is funded to a huge extent by borrowings, and the other part coming through the government support is 495 billion at the end of this debt relief period. But both of them, it comes at a cost, right? The cost of funding, and there is a cost to the shareholder and government, National Treasury, in raising that money to pass on to Eskom as a source of equity. And it's not a free lunch, in Peter's introduction, he mentioned the point that, are you going to pay as a taxpayer or as an electricity consumer? But I think if we want to agree on sustainability, we must also agree that any supplier of electricity, they must recover efficient costs of production and its services, but also the cost of capital. And we seeing as Eskom, based on what NERSA allows us as those returns, we currently, our cost of debt is around 11%. Even with the recent decision, it goes to 4%, 5%, and 6%. So yes, we know it can't happen overnight, but that trajectory must continue. And then we must deliver on that efficient cost base, and also continue to work with law enforcement agencies dealing with fraud and corruption. Maybe my last point to add that we haven't really spoken about, I think in terms of the new pricing methodology that I know the Department of Energy and Electricity are looking at, we need to be much more transparent around sectors, be it residential or even industrial, on those that are going to be supported from the overall price to pay a lesser price. Understand that subsidy that's embedded, be transparent about it, but also indicate how is it funded. Can it be funded by the other consumer base? Already all customers are struggling, whether it's commercial or residential. And maybe this is where government, and I know it's difficult understanding the financial situation that National Treasury and the Minister of Finance are balancing, that we need to be transparent that this is the amount we are protecting the customer base in terms of what they can afford. And if we do that, then maybe you're going to get the culture to move to not damage infrastructure. And then we also invest to reduce the energy losses, whether it's energy losses or the losses we see in the water infrastructure. I think that though that component in terms of municipal services is a key category to the growth that our country so requires going forward. But again, it's the engagements, it's the transparency. And let me say this, we are busy now following the MYPD6 decision and the messages we're getting from the minister, our board. The affordability issue of electricity is key. It's pointless to have access to electricity if you can't afford it and you can't get a hold of it. So we really need to address that issue as well. So those are my comments and inputs. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you, Caleb. And I think as we go and I hear everyone share their inputs, more than anything else is that what I'm realizing that when you talk about financial sustainability, it's not just about the finances. It's not just about people paying. There are various issues that are coming to play, particularly around theft as well. That is really contributing to that, as well as awareness and communication as well for customers to be aware of what it entails, or what are the prices that are involved in that. So just to move to you, Robert, I just wanted to hear your responses, because you have mentioned that we need to increase FBE and all of that. But I wanted to say, what are you as a municipality trying to do to encourage customer payment and revenue collection? And what kind of support as a municipality do you think you need, whether from private sector or from Eskom or from national government, outside of increasing FBE? What other levels of support do you think are needed to ensure financial sustainability of smaller municipalities?
Thank you very much. My view on that, maybe just to talk about the experience that I got when I get in here. To tell you, I'm coming from a metro. I was working in City of Tshwane before I come in here, where the losses was. We tend to ignore the residential because you find the large power users are subsidizing that. So the moment you get into the area like where I am, the local municipality, where the customer base of over 70% of the income for electricity is from residential. So getting into the municipality where the losses was above 70%, we had to start the issue of measurement, identifying the leaks, of which among them it was old infrastructure and metering, of which we've embarked on the metering. We have installed the meters, improved the revenue, of which we have reached that to reduce the losses to below 20%, which will assist the municipality to be sustainable. At this point in time, what we are doing, changing the style where people have been getting electricity for free, and then you start to push them to pay for electricity. It's not an easy one. Just to give you one of the experience that I had, pushing my team to go and install meters. They were pushed away, called the police, law enforcement. As I am talking like this, I was pulled off, even my shirts were taken out. Because people reached the point of saying he is the one who is behind this. But we pushed to the level where people ultimately understood that electricity is not for free. The reason I'm saying this, we ultimately had to open even the case, people were arrested, and people now have succumbed. That's why now we are actually moving and improving in terms of the losses that people are starting to pay. However, we are not getting enough funding externally to support the drive because we are using the own funding. And this makes the drive to move very slowly if you look at it, because there are still people who are getting electricity for free, meaning people are tapping from our grid unmeasured. And then we are getting rid of that slowly, but surely we are getting there. So the view is that if we get the national government to assist the smaller municipalities, not just the debt relief, there must be a debt relief supported with the funding to increase the revenue in terms of smart metering. At the same time, we are also doing public participation and through media, and our executive mayor is also in the forefront for that, to advise the people and encourage them to pay for electricity. To say, electricity is not for free. When you are using that electricity, you must know somehow someone must pay for that electricity. And in this case, it's a municipality. Even if you happen to be using electricity where you are not paying, it is advisable not to abuse that same electricity, because at the same time, that much electricity that you are using, because those people, they tend to be using over 800. I mean, you put in a meter. I mean, the experience that I had, I put in a meter with a preloaded unit of 20 kilowatt hours. They get finished within 2 hours. So you can think about it in a residential house, and the meter is measuring correctly. And ultimately, people even accuse us of saying this meter, because we are putting them, there is this statement of saying split meter, and people who are against us for political reasons, they ultimately call it not a split meter. They say it's a speed meter, meaning it is moving very fast than normal. So those are the experiences that we are having. But at this point in time, because we have a drive that we actually push the politician to understand that electricity, as much as there's a free basic electricity, is not necessarily for free. People must pay for the energy they are consuming. That is what I can tell for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Just to come to you, Rose, do you perhaps have some international case studies that you have heard of that could be shared with some of our municipalities to increase revenue collection and ensure financial sustainability, or some strategies that you think of all that have been mentioned so far? Do you think there are some gaps that are still there that you think you can fill in there?
I think that the strategy that Eskom is talking about with respect to Eskom agency agreements, involvement with the municipalities could be one strategy. However, it would not address legacy debt, but going forward, it could play a role in collections. I do, however, have a question for Eskom in terms of the number of municipalities, the sizes, that capacity to be able to take or to handle most of them. Would that work? I know that Peter from UCT also mentioned concessions. So that is a model that we've seen. I think it's Brazil that is using that model. And the ring fencing properly accounting for really who belongs to the category, which is for free basic electricity, and who doesn't. I don't think we are doing that very well. Some beneficiaries that are supposed to benefit are not. And so we from a data management point of view, that is I think it's still an elusive point. I could be wrong. My colleagues will correct me. But I think the most important thing really with the capacity lacking in some of these municipalities and a turnaround not being feasible, together with the fact that government is not helping coming up with a solution. There needs to be interventions in some of the municipalities. I do question, however, the capability or the capacity to be able to handle so many of them from an Eskom perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Caleb, do you think do you want to come in a little bit to respond to that?
Yeah. So Rose, definitely an important question, and we believe as Eskom staff we can help some of the municipalities, but we can't help all of them. Otherwise, it means us increasing our resources. I think another element that was touched on by Peter, and I know through the NECOM we're looking at this. The whole EDI reform, this whatever version of the REDS is currently being discussed, this 200 odd municipalities needs to be rationalized. So I think there you could get some economies of scale, skills, etc. So that discussion is key, and understanding that the minister and his team intends maybe around July or so putting something in front of cabinet around the EDI reform, which I think can contribute to dealing with these challenges. And Rose, your other key point, we as Eskom have even put forward increasing the free basic electricity from 50 kilowatt hours to 150 kilowatt hours. But we also know that in terms of the take-up and the administration of it, I think there's about 10 million people that qualified for it, but only 2 million are actually utilizing it. So our view around that governance and administration to make it much more easier, let's first get the utilization rate up as well, and then deal with increasing. But I think as a combination now, especially when you're looking at the low income around the residentials, I think there has to be. We spoke a lot about smart meters, but we know that South Africa is endowed with PV. So as a combination, I think this combination of PV, free basic electricity, smart meters, etc., and then this transparency around what is the affordability and the subsidies. Maybe that's the combination that South Africa needs to look at around these key categories of customers to ensure sustainability, because it gets back to Robert's earlier point. People are used, they need it, it's an essential commodity, this electricity. And I think we need to look at a mix of elements, including technology, to provide the commodity to that customer base. But I think whether it's paying 50 Rand or 300 Rand or 500 Rand a month, I think this principle of paying for the commodity needs to be impressed on the citizens of the country. So those are my inputs. Thanks.
Thank you, Caleb, for coming in there. Finally, just coming to you before I pose my question to the audience. Please do start sharing your questions in the Q&A. After panelists' inputs, we'll start taking questions from the audience. So please do feel free to share your questions in the Q&A or raise your hands, and we'll start responding to your questions. Finally, from what we have heard, because I think there is a lot coming from touching on the residential, but of course you come from the business and large intensive users. So what are some of these supports that you think you could possibly provide to municipalities and Eskom to ensure that there is a financial sustainability, but also to encourage the business sector to assist in ensuring that there is that cross subsidization, that they do accept it and continue to provide to our municipalities and Eskom.
Thank you, Sheng. It's a difficult one. But maybe let me start by acknowledging, what Caleb was saying. For starters, around the EPP, we are really looking forward to that consultation. We have heard the minister saying that he's tabled the draft, for network consultation. So we will be looking at that quite closely. And I also like the fact that, Caleb, on behalf of Eskom, is also bringing up the issues of affordability. Because I think in the past, we have not really been talking about affordability as well. We're only looking at cost reflectivity. So now when we start talking affordability, I think there is a room for us to meet each other and find a solution that is good for South Africa. Because certainly we are not against the financial sustainability of the utilities, because without them, we have no business as the consumers. So we need to strike that balance. But currently, our methodologies do not allow us for that. So that certainly we're looking forward to it. Same applies with the EDI, because really some of the issues are around the financial viability of the municipalities. I think Robert touched on, the perspective from a smaller municipalities, and there are many of them which are struggling but willing to do something. So hopefully with this EDI restructuring, we could develop a model that will make these municipalities to be sustainable, at least from an electricity point of view. But I understand that there is also another work from a municipal, structural changes. But certainly from the EDI restructuring, we're looking forward to that. Kelly touched on the fact that, it's coming in, to cabinet in July. I understand probably the consultations, I think, according to the feedback we got, is going to start somewhere around about April to May, So we are looking forward to that consultation and see how this EDI is going to work. Because until we deal with that, Robert is going to have a tough time doing all these things which he wants to do. The third element I just want to talk about, I think Jose touched on it. Jose, I hope I'm calling you correct. I've had other names. It's Jose. The issues of the political interventions, they started even before Minister Dlamini Zuma, 2014, I think it was, when there was an interministerial task team. And that work, I think, continued to somewhere around about 2016, 2017. And some of the things we're talking about, the issues around communication for non-payment. A campaign was developed, smart metering budgets were drafted, all these things were worked out, including what Eskom can provide as support to municipalities, But I think we just failed to implement that, and at the time, I think the debt was somewhere around 14 billion rands. It has ballooned now to 110 billion end of March, according to the presentation from Peter. So the question is that over this period, instead of arresting the problem, it has just actually, increased many folds more. So I think there is an issue of the political will to resolve the issue, which we need to talk about. Recently, National Treasury was giving a perspective in terms of what they have been doing as well, and sharing equal frustration in terms of the failure to see progress. So there is that where you have all of these ideas being put on the table, and some of them quite workable, but we just simply don't do it, So I think those are some of the challenges. Coming to what we can do as the business, for starters, in terms of the subsidies, we contribute quite substantially. I think, for instance, if you consider the price I quoted earlier on, 2023-2024, on the affordability subsidy, we were contributing over 7 cents of the standard tariff of about 170, and that excludes the electrification subsidy, which we also add into that. This year, I think the contribution is around about 9 cents, so that is happening. But having said so, this is draining our members, coffers as well, because the effect is increased costs. So I liked the idea which Kelly put on the table to say, as we discuss electricity pricing subsidy, we need to look at the issues of transparency. With that, it also means, are we giving the subsidy to the relevant people? Currently, the lack of transparency is where people who shouldn't be getting subsidies actually get subsidies. So it should be targeted. So that I think that's one aspect of it within that transparency issue. The second one is who is going to fund it? Can it continue to be funded by other consumers? When it was first introduced, the logic or rationale was that electricity was the cheapest in the world from South Africa. So to provide for such assistance, it was an easy decision to make, which I think the members embraced. But now they are facing their own financial, pressures, to such an extent that some of them now are applying for the national pricing agreements because they are not able to afford the electricity. So the issues of affordability subsidy needs to be discussed, and we hope that we could find a clear solution. We fully accept that the fiscus is also challenged. The other part where we think we can assist, and we have indicated that, but it's something which we obviously need to work with Eskom on, is the securing of the networks, because you find that the vandalism, which is also a huge cost, has a cost impact to Eskom. It happens on some of the networks which are closer to our members' operations. So in terms of the security, there is a room for participation in a program where we could jointly secure, those assets. In some instances, it is already happening. Probably we just need to talk more to say, how do we make it more, effective, so to say, because it's not only about helping Eskom, it also help our members, because with all of this theft, it interrupts the power supplies, So it is in our interest to make sure that vandalism is managed to some extent. So I think at that point, that's what I think we could do directly as members. But generally, as business, we are active participants in the NECOM processes. And as you would know, business has contributed some of the funding in terms of resourcing NECOM. So as well as bringing in intellectual, capital to assist in terms of developing these solutions. So yes, we are part of some of these discussions where business is allowed to participate. And we are quite upbeat about the fact that that is happening, because it doesn't help to have government, business, and the communities operating in their own islands. To work together, we think that that's a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Fanele, for that response. Just to come into the audience, we'll take some questions. Please do raise your hands or share them in the chat. There is a question from Lamis on the Q&A. I'll address it to you, Khalib, but I also see that Robert is responding to it as well. The question is, for clarity's sake, is the smart meter option being considered as a solution because it allows customers to choose how they use power, e.g. during off-peak times, and thereby pay less for power? while also protecting Eskom and municipalities from their theft, because these meters can't be tampered with?
I'll go and I'll ask my colleagues, Robert and them, to also help, especially on the technical side. Yeah, that is definitely our understanding. It allows for that flexibility in terms of time of use tariffs. I think also in terms of situations where we find that the grid is constrained, then we literally remotely can intervene to reduce effectively the load reductions, as an example. And in terms of tamper-proof, that is our understanding. That is extremely difficult. I'm not going to stand here and say it's impossible. I'm not the technical person, but it's definitely much more difficult. But if Robert and Vanilla and them can assist, please, and Rose, you're welcome. Thanks.
Robert, do you want to come in?
Thank you. On the issue of tamper-proof, we are putting them practically where I'm working. The problem that we are challenged with is that the same consumers, they can go to the level of getting grinders to grind those. If I had a way, I would actually even share the experience. We put in those tamper-proof. They assist. It's one of the things that is lowering which is assisting to lower the losses that we are experiencing. However, it is not sustainable, because you find that one box is supplying maybe up to 8 consumers. If one of the consumer it's not working and it's staying at home for quite some time, and he has the access to grind, it affects the entire consumers who are not stealing. The same time, in terms of smart metering, let me tell you, that is the way to go. It assists, it reduces the load. The experience that I had, maybe the CEO will be able to, maybe it might have come to his desk one time. We have the area called Betal, that we had a demand of around 32 MVA. With this smart metering, we have reduced it to the level of 25 megawatts. And it has assisted that we no longer have this load reduction in the area, because the demand was much higher than Eskom was giving us. And now it has assisted. This smart metering is a solution. However, the people that are outside not working, they affect this, and it becomes too costly. If you look at it, the installation of a tamper-proof, it costs up 50,000 rand, and then you are putting in the tamper-proof that is supplying about 8 consumers, and sometimes 4, and it costs a lot. And when they break those boxes, you have to start from scratch, because you find that you cannot repair the box itself. You have to start. It's a safe. It's more like a safe, the way it is. They grind it. It means you have to start all over again. And it's not easy to identify the person who has grinded it, because if they grind and it is not successful, you have to start all over again. Those are the experiences that we are having. Again, I say smart solution or smart metering, it's a way to go. It is bearing a very good fruit where I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caleb and Robert, for that response. Just as a quick question on my side around smart meters, are these the rollout of smart meters will also be free? And when they do tamper with it, do customers have to pay for it to get a new one, or do you provide a free new one again, Robert?
We do find people. We have a tariff. If we find that we have tampered with the box, we charge around 6,000 rand excluding VAT. And these people, they do come. That's why it's the first year when we were starting, it was not going smoothly. But now it is much better because they realize that when we are going around, we realize that we have tampered with the meter, we fine, and then come again, you are not paying, we rip or we remove infrastructure completely where you have to start all over again to apply electricity from scratch. So that is a better solution at this point in time. However, the same people, if somebody who is so-called indigent cannot even afford that 6,000, it becomes a problem because those people, they come and steal the cables that are connecting people who are good consumers. During the day, they go and take out the cables, though on regular basis, like once per fortnight, as what we are doing because of the capacity. We go out and remove all the illegal connections. And the problem is when you go and remove those illegal connections that they are doing in any specific area, the moment you do that, you find that we are able to take out in one day, we are able to remove over maybe 200 connections that are illegal. The moment you take out those, in a period not exceeding a week, they will go and remove in another area, and then you have a burden to connect those people who are good consumers to replace those boundary conductors, and then you are getting them in those areas where they have connected illegally. And those cables, you cannot reuse them. They become scrap. So it becomes a lot of operational cost on our side. That is the experience that we are getting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, please do share, raise your hands or share your questions in the Q&A. And also, I'd like to remind you to please fill in the survey question. We have shared the link on the chat. There is another question. Robert and Caleb, if you can take it again, is are microgrids and battery storage charging during off-peak times also possible be a solution for municipal debt? Would the same risks like safety and theft still be an issue?
Robert, you can proceed.
Yeah. Do you foresee microgrids and battery storage as a possible solution similar to smart meters?
On the utility level, yes, but for our consumers, remember, people who are connected to the grid, it's not assisting much. The reason I'm saying that it's when you do load shedding, the moment we switch back on, the inrush current becomes too high, and then we have strain on our substations. You find that in most cases, for our network, which is old, the moment we switch back on, we also have to have the team that is switching back on little by little. Every 30 minutes, you switch back on, because the inrush current becomes too high. That is the problem. But on the storage in the utility level, if we are able to have the lithium batteries that are able to supply enough capacity up to, say, 5 MVA or above, then it can be a better solution.
Great. Can I also bring in Peter to respond to some of the questions that have been raised so far?
Thank you, Lingi. I just wanted to make a comment about the Eskom efficiencies that Fenele raised earlier on. And I'm happy that Caleb actually acknowledged that Eskom in broad terms really needs to improve its efficiencies. And I think one intervention area could be looking at the prudency of some of the costs of Eskom, especially generation costs, the primary energy costs, and how these contracts are negotiated and how they are assessed. I think that would help to lower the prices, the costs, and the tariffs that consumers ultimately pay. And I know there is a challenge around enforcing the prudency objective as for the regulator, and how do you incentivize the monopoly really here to actually cut back on costs, because that's typically the big challenge with the incumbent power operators. I think there is scope for Eskom to review some of its cost structures and see whether the actually efficient costs only are transferred or translated into the pricing applications submitted to NASA, and that they come to a consensus on what they consider to be reasonable costs and what's not considered reasonable. And that also feeds into the other point that Fanere mentioned around the cost of the new build Eskom undertakes, whether the previous big plants that were under construction, or whether the new ones that are emerging, including the innovations around battery storage and solar PV, and also repurposing some of the coal plants. They think there could be more push to actually rationalize some of the costs that are there. When it comes to the issue around losses and trying to manage losses, I think there's been good practices across the continent and Europe, and that could be drawn into South Africa's case. Issues of affordability really manifest from a bigger perspective, which is a macro issue around addressing the inequalities in the country, and how can a national policy be designed to actually reduce the level of inequality around here, because power theft, in a sense, is a social transfer. Because if you look at the people stealing power, they're not stealing to do some weird thing. They just try to use the power for their own use. They're using this either to do a small business or to light up their homes and warm up their homes. So the intervention that could be put in place need to involve a mindset change, a social mindset change, and appreciating that actually energy should help the individuals improve their welfare and livelihood. And I'm happy that Caleb mentioned that they are considering increasing the FBE from 50 kilowatts to about 150. I think that would make a big shift in the way people utilize power theft, potentially likely reduce. What I don't find a bit strange is the other comment that Fanele mentioned. We have these people that are selling 34 transformers. It's an illegal market that's festering there. How do you steal 34 transformers and start selling transformers and redistributing power? That's a huge cartel. I think it's a pointer to, it's a tip of the iceberg that Eskom needs to interest itself in, or these municipalities need to interest themselves in, and try to cut back or to prevent this from happening. I know it's not an easy fight, because there could be a bigger ring around that's involved. But yeah, I agree that loss reduction needs to be really contained. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Peter. There is another question from David, and he says, will the implementation of a better tariff structure with greater fixed costs and lower energy costs linked to dynamic time of use tariff impact the domestic PV installation? Can I pose that to you, Caleb, and maybe finally, Roshek, you could also respond to that? Caleb?
Yeah, I think definitely, from our perspective, especially now with as part of this retail tariff plan that's been approved by NERSA, and the fact that you can basically feed back into the grid and recover a cost. I think that's going to contribute more to those consumers that can afford a rooftop PV. They will do that to reduce their overall electricity bill. From an Eskom perspective, yes, it does affect sales, but I think in the bigger scheme of things, in terms of the stability and the relief we get, we definitely support that. So yeah, I see it as a positive for the industry and the country going forward. And again, maybe there's another point we haven't impressed upon to deal with the industry, that we also need NERSA to be much more quicker with making decisions to deal with the changing landscape and environment. Because we can do all the work, but if the legislation and the regulations are not in place, it's not transparent and easily understood. Having ambiguous regulations doesn't help any of the players in the industry. So I think that's another key area in coming up with the solutions that we need to look at. And just to protect myself here, Peter, Eskom has put the proposal of 150. We can't fund it ourselves. It's for National Treasury and the Minister to look into that. But yes, I think, I don't know when the 50 kilowatt hours was introduced, but it's quite old. And I think the environment, the consumption patterns have changed. And it's an area that needs to be looked at. Maybe the one point that Peter also touched on, batteries as well as this combination. Yeah, in our plans going forward, we see battery storage as key to also help in doing that optimally. And the microgrids we really see it's a better, more economic solution to complete universal access, especially in the difficult geographical areas, far cheaper than looking to expand whether it's a distribution or a transmission grid. So I just needed to add that, but I think Rose wants to come in.
I actually did not get the question, so I'm not trying to come in.
Oh, okay. The question was, how will the implementation of a better tariff structure with greater fixed costs and lower energy costs linked to dynamic time of use tariff impact the domestic PV installation?
Okay, all right. No, I think that Caleb has actually touched on that already, but I think from an infrastructure perspective, having that fixed tariff is also beneficial, obviously, to Eskom. So consumers from the point of view of being able to sell back to Eskom, that's also beneficial. So I know that consumers don't like that, but I think it's a win-win.
If I may venture in on this one, it's not really on the large power users, the question. I think, yes, the introduction of fixed cost in principle is the correct thing, because I think tariffs should be reflective of the consumer's costs to the grid. Somebody else pays for that fixed cost if it is not paid by all, users of that. But having said so, though, I think there is a need for some kind of phasing in of this, because I think the question Dave is asking is to say, what will be the impact on the PV installation? The reality is that it kills some of the business cases, because where you may have a 5-year, payback period, based on the current tariff structures. Now you may find that that increases to 8 years, 10 years, not that those costs are not true, they are true. So the question is, if you introduce such a fixed cost as an absolute quantum, let's say at a particular stage, then the impact really, I think it will be to discourage people to move to PV installations. And if that happens, when you already have energy security challenges, you have to weigh in then to say what is the best way to go forward. So my view would be to say that we need some kind of phasing in of this, because people invested in these installations knowing a certain tariff structure, and then those who have not invested, there still needs to be a way of encouraging them, to be able to invest, because energy security continues to be a challenge we are also facing. So we have to create this balance between the two. Thank you.
Thank you so much, finally, for that input. Colleagues, are there any more questions? Please do feel free to raise your hand or to put it on the chat. All right, I'm not seeing any hands or questions in the Q&A. Just a reminder to please fill in the survey. There will be another survey link. It has been shared now. There's another survey that has been shared now. Please respond to that as well. So please do take the time before we end the session. And we now have 13 minutes, so we'll start doing the wrap up. But in the meantime, colleagues, please do fill in the survey that has been shared on the chat. Just to close now, I think if we could hear just some closing words on the session today, Caleb, just to hear, because I think we have the discussion has been around what you are doing as Eskom as well as what the municipalities are doing. But I would like to hear what you think business, private sector, local government, citizens could do to support Eskom in being able to drive financial sustainability in the energy sector. So what are some of the contributions that we can do?
Yeah, I think, as a country, how we looked and approached the load shedding challenges, we need to really work together with business communities, government, Eskom, COCTA, to deal with the municipal challenges. It's not only related to electricity, but water and other services. That is a key priority as a catalyst for growth. And in doing this, maybe the other key message also from the regulator and going forward, whether it's water or electricity, to any customer, you need some predictability of where prices are going, not only in the short term, but the medium and longer term. Even if you give a cone with assumptions, I think that's going to go a long way, and just the transparency that we need around subsidies. But again, Eskom doesn't have all the answers. We need the experience of the people around the table and in industry. But at the end of the day, I think Fanele touched on it. This even started before Nkosazana, Zuma's, Lamini's. This issue around municipalities and resolving that it can't go on for much longer. Something, and we must try it. And if it fails, whether it's combination of the agency agreement that we're putting on the table as Eskom, but we got to try things differently to see how it works and then adjust accordingly as we take the learnings on board. But I think last but not least, we need to make use of technology, be it smart meters, batteries, and also artificial intelligence around the security challenges that we're facing in many industries, and working with law enforcement. So that would be my inputs. But working together, being decisive and implementing as was indicated. Sometimes we make these decisions, but there's no implementation, including Eskom. And maybe my last closing remarks, we take the learnings from the big build as we continue with new projects, and we must never repeat those mistakes of the past, because it costs the economy too much in terms of money, in terms of time, and delivering an important commodity to the customers and the citizens of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Khoshile, do you want to go in for closing remarks?
Did you say me? Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
please. Apologies.
Yes, I think that, electricity is central to the economy. It's a critical input to the economy. And Eskom is a key player in that regard, being a majority supplier of electricity in the country. So it's quite essential to ensure that Eskom is sustainable. And it's critical for government to do things differently in terms of trying to resolve the municipal debt. And municipalities are showing, in terms of the example that Robert has shown us here, that if you implement smart metering, and also if you provide the capacity that is required within municipalities, you can turn things around. Yes, the 70 more than 70% losses are shocking, but it's still impressive to hear that they've been reduced to about 40%. To me, that says that it's a combination of providing the relevant skills, which is what Eskom is talking about with this Eskom agency agreement. Peter is talking about in terms of concessions. So we need a concerted effort and to be serious about implementation of all of these solutions, which have been around the table for quite a long time. Just need political will to push forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, over to you, closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with both Jose and Caleb. Economy is energy is the energy for our economic growth. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Two is that this is a national crisis. It's not an Eskom crisis,
Yes. Yes.
So the issues of collaboration by all parties are quite important. Eskom cannot resolve these issues on their own. So I think we need to do that. And by so saying, we also need to talk about the issues of accountability, who does what, and are they being held to account, for the portion which they are supposed to bring. Because I think the issues of failure to implement are in part as a result of that, where we talk and we do not hold people to account for their own actions. So I think we definitely need to improve on that. My sense is that part of the issues are really, in my view, fairly simple around the culture of law enforcement. Certain things, they just do not make sense that people could run parallel, networks, and yet we've got, law agencies which are supposed to assist Eskom with that. We cannot expect Eskom to be a national policeman for electricity as well. I think we need to start seeing results. The same applies in terms of the work Caleb was talking about in terms of rooting out corruption. I think the issues of expediting that work, because the sooner we deal with those issues, we will be able to arrest some of the challenges we have. But the slowness of these processes, I'm sure it's not probably out of lack of trying, but certainly from a consumer point of view, we feel it in our pockets. So the sooner these matters are handled, the better. I think that's all. I will leave it at that at the moment, and just thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to share our views on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you. And Robert, any concluding remarks from your side as the municipality?
Thank you very much. What I can say is that the installation of smart metering is a solution. I think the moment we do that, we'll be able to implement. If we put in smart meters throughout, we are able to do the time of use appropriately. Because at this point in time, even during peak hours, people are using, more especially the residential, is the same amount. It's unlike in those large power users who are charged at time of use. And people will be able to control their consumption much easier. The issue of tariffs, I think it is one of the elements that I know the minister is keen on this one. We need to have a very good disparity of saying residential need to pay less, and also to increase the free basic electricity. I have done my studies here where I'm working. The average consumption after putting in the meters, the residential, the average of the meters that I've installed today, looking at the low income, they are able to buy electricity for 553 rand per month per household. So you can see, and this is not necessarily enough for the entire month. So to a certain degree, I somehow feel that the free basic electricity for indigents needs to be increased to, say, around 350 kilowatt per hour. That, once it is implemented, we will be able to attend to cable theft, not theft of electricity, as Fanele has said. because people are stealing electricity just because they need it. It's not because they are forced to steal electricity because they need it. There are people who are stealing our infrastructure. So we'll be able to deviate a bit if the FBE is 350, and then we are able to cap the issue of copper theft, because this is one of the elements that is happening, that people are stealing these large power cables, like 70 millimeter copper cable. You find that they are stealing them for just to sell, not for to steal electricity. But if you steal bundle conductor, you know these people, they are stealing that bundle conductor to use it, to reuse it, the same conductor for illegal connection. But these other ones, which we didn't talk much about, the cable theft, it's also a big factor. We also need a big drive on the political element. I know Rose has talked about it. We need a political drive in campaigning, not tell people that electricity is for free, because that statement, it's it's misused. The moment you say electricity is for free, people take it that they should get it completely for free. So that is the element that we need to cover also. With those, I think the rest have been covered by the fellow colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us and taking the time to share your views on this. I think I have taken a lot from this, particularly the fact that there isn't one solution to this problem. There's a number of them that have been mentioned. One is we need the skills and skills transfer, particularly between Eskom and local government. We need external funding for municipalities to be able to implement the technologies that could alleviate. We need law enforcement to come into place as well to with the theft that the municipalities are seeing. And lastly, also we need collaboration. All of us need to come to play to be able to solve the financial sustainability of Eskom and our municipalities. But again, thank you to everyone who was able to join us today. We do have another session on the 1st of April, a follow-up to this session. So we will send out communication around that, and we hope that you'll be able to join us again. And before I close, I'd like to hand over to Karen to do the close out and to say thank you to all of you for being able to join us today. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Shlengiwe, and good morning, everybody. And let me just start by saying a very big thank you to Fanele, Caleb, Brucey, and Robert, as well as Peter, for responding positively to the invitation for this very important discussion. And I have to say, I think all of you have brought very, very significant points to the table, as well as a wide range of experiences across the value chain that contribute to this problem. What I think was very important in today's discussion was the continuous reminder that this problem can't be solved by Eskom alone. It can't be solved by a municipality alone. It can't be solved by power users. It is a very integrated problem, but it's also a problem that's very characteristic of many things that we're facing in the energy sector and the country in general. And I think Fanele made the point that this problem really is endemic in terms of the bigger challenges that we have as an economy, and culture, our cultural responses as a society. So there's a lot of things that we need to deal with in getting to the bottom of this. What I think was very important was a discussion or continued discussions around how do the various parties come together at a level of granularity that solves these problems, that brings sustainable change about, but also from an umbrella perspective, from an overall perspective in terms of some of the key policy decisions that need to be made to really get to the bottom of this. One of the challenges I think we face as a sector, and this is ongoing, and I think everybody in the value chain of solving these kind of situations needs to continuously interrogate why some of the things we've previously put in place don't work, and what do we need to do differently going forward. So, I hear a lot of solutions that we've tried before, and I certainly hope that the thinking this time around is what didn't work the last time? What do you need to do differently? What has changed in terms of the context so that we have a much better chance at success this time around? In concluding, I think the need to address this issue gets more and more imperative every day. So hopefully we'll come up with good solutions together. And I think the key aspects of integration, solving these problems collectively, finding the synergies, holding people accountable for delivery, and making sure the delivery happens are probably three critical aspects of what is needed. And that needs to be underpinned with the right skills, the right political will and intent, and some broader cultural changes to make this happen. Having said that, Hlengiwe has raised the issue of the follow-up conversation that we'll have on the 1st of April. I think we'll pick up on some of the key themes from that came out from this discussion and position that one so that we can have a good follow-up on some of the things that we've talked about today. And we certainly look forward to having all of you join us. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to the events team of Sanya and our event organizers for putting this together. Have a lovely day further, and we look forward to seeing you on the 1st of April. Thank you.